Hello, thank you for joining us on your channel of choice at this time. It's time for Cold Files, and this is your number one program on TV when it comes to, um, you know, taking a look at many lingering issues in our judicial sector, namely from corruption to crime cases, prolonged trials, and delay in justice dispensation. So this is where we do an overview of cases that have dragged long in court, without being resolved. And this is your channel, Third Eye Africa TV, the home of Crime Watch, investigative reporting, and of course, community safety. Welcome to the program. My name is Charles Agedu. But before I go on, I would like to just recap some of the cases we've treated on this program, which have, progressed in court. One of those cases is the alleged forgery that involve a very senior lawyer, Chief Mike Ozekome, which was recently decided in the court in the FCT, talking about ordering the forfeiture of the said property that allegedly was acquired in the name of a former minister of the FCT, talking about late Jeremiah Oseni. And one other case that have also progressed is the case involving the former minister of aviation, talking about Stella Odua, which recently the court, concluded that she has settled with the government, her issues with the government. I don't really understand what that means, settle. I know there is out of court settlement. Yeah, but when there are cases that involve public funds, should it just end in, agreements outside the courts? I will leave that for the public to decide. And another case we have done on this program, which concerns the former head of the Intelligent Response Squad, talking about Abba Kyari, though multiple charges before the courts. One of the charges, which involved him and his two brothers, was struck out by the Federal High Court in the FCT. And but the NDLEA still stand their ground, insisting that other charges, particularly the one involving fraud and alleged drug, trafficking, is still going to go on. And these are some of the updates I want to bring to you before we continue on today's episode. I will just, take a quick break at this point. When I come back after this break, I will be introducing my guest to you, who is already with me in the studio, to take a look at another very important case that has lingered, remained unresolved in our courts. Don't go away. I'll be back after this moment.
According to a 2022 survey by the World Bank, about 63% of Nigerians, roughly 133 million people, are multidimensionally poor. Poverty remains significantly higher in rural areas, with 72%, than in the urban centers, with 42%, with the most severe levels recorded in northern Nigeria. Rising inflation and removal of fuel subsidies have further increased the cost of living, placing additional strain on households. Successive governments have introduced various initiatives to tackle poverty, but corruption continues to undermine these efforts, often overshadowing progress in addressing the crisis. In 2024, former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadiya Umar Farouk, was charged before Justice Dainde Dikbeolu of the Federal High Court in Lagos. The case followed a Freedom of Information suit filed by the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP. In a landmark judgment, the court ordered Umar to account for the disbursement of 729 billion reportedly paid to 24.3 million poor Nigerians over 6 months in 2021. She was directed to provide a comprehensive list of beneficiaries, details of payments by state, and the selection criteria used. Justice Dikbeolu held that the former minister is obligated under the Freedom of Information Act to disclose such information. The court further directed her to explain the rationale behind the 5,000 naira monthly payment, which amounted to about 5% of Nigeria's 13.6 trillion naira 2021 budget. In a press statement after the judgment, Sarah Deputy Director Kolawole Oluwadare said the groundbreaking judgment was a victory for transparency and accountability in the spending of public funds, and that Justice Dikbeolu's judgment shows the urgent need for the Tinubu government to genuinely address the systemic allegations of corruption in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, and other ministries, departments and agencies, as documented by the Auditor General of the Federation, urged President Bola Tinubu to immediately obey the court order. Femi Falana described the judgment as one of the most patriotic public interest litigations ever undertaken in Nigeria, and called for the Tinubu government to use the judgment as the basis for comprehensively addressing cases of corruption in the ministry and bringing to justice those suspected to be responsible, as well as recovering proceeds of corruption. In the letter dated 6 July 2024 sent to President Bola Tinubu on the judgment and signed by SERAP Deputy Director Kolawole Oluwadare, it reads in part, "We urge you to direct the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development and the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation to immediately comply and release the spending details of the 729 billion as ordered by the court. The immediate enforcement and implementation of the judgment by your government will be a victory for the rule of law, transparency and accountability in the governance process and management of public resources, including the 729 billion. By immediately complying with the judgment, your government will be demonstrating to Nigerians that it is different from Buhari government, which persistently and brazenly defied the country's judiciary, as sending a powerful message to politicians and others that there will be no impunity for grand corruption. Immediately implementing the judgment will restore trust and confidence in the independence of Nigeria's judiciary. SERAP urges you to take a clean break with the past and take clear and decisive steps to demonstrate your commitment to the rule of law, transparency, and accountability in the governance processes. However, recent inquiries into the enforcement of the judgment reveals that the former minister has filed an appeal and no date has yet been fixed for its hearing at the appellate court.
We see the Senate president more or less going in a representative capacity on behalf of the president. We saw the new loan request. I was shocked when I was reading my paper the next day and I saw that it had already been approved. It's as if the present legislature has become an extension of the executive arm, and that is actually a challenge. The President Tinubu's government has tried in their fight against corruption. They have bolstered the institutions, the EFCC have been doing their job, the ICPC and all of that. But it is beginning to look like corruption is multifaceted, because we know some persons in government, some former governors, who decamped and suddenly their sins, have been put by the way. The judiciary in Nigeria is not independent. I'll tell you that for free. That's why they'll still keep on having strikes. Why do they have strikes? Payments. So if the executive doesn't like this, a group of those in charge, they'll withhold funds and all of that. So there's really no true independence. No, I will not say there is. The symbol of justice is Lady Justicia. Her eyes are blinded. She doesn't know who you are. So even if you are her son, she doesn't care because she can't even see you. Her arms are there with the sword to come down the scale of justice depending on who and what your case looks like. But in Nigeria, justice has taken away the blindfold. So if you look like somebody I like, or maybe I've been whispered to, I will give you justice, whether or not you deserve it.
Welcome back from that quick break. If you have just watched that prologue, that has set the tone for our conversation today. The discussion around the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, talking about Sadiya Umar Farouk, and a case involving the disbursement of, billions of naira to homes. I think 24.3 million Nigerians were said to have received 5,000 naira from this ministry. And the case before the courts was taken to court by the Socio-Economic Rights and Advocacy Project, Accountability Project, I beg your pardon. And today I'll be extracting that case with me in the studio. I have a guest, a legal practitioner, and the person of Emmanuel Jonathan. Emmanuel Jonathan has joined me today, and I've been on him. Lawyers and their busy schedule. And I'm happy at the end I was able to bring him to the studio.
Thank
Emmanuel,
you.
I want to thank you for your time, for finding time to join me on the program today.
And that is my absolute pleasure. I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Right, and that prologue has set the tone for our conversation around the question of justice delivery in Nigeria. But I want us to start with what your take is in terms of why is court order not obeyed in Nigeria, especially when it comes to when it's against highly placed individuals.
All right. Thank you very much for that question.
And you might want to just give us a brief overview or a background of what you know about the case in question as well. Then link it to why you think court orders are not obeyed.
All right. So basically, like you rightly said when you were introducing the whole program and all of that. So we are aware that during the concluding stages, well, somewhere in between the tenure of our late president, Muhammadu Buhari, of course, the then Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, she was saddled, of course, being in charge of that ministry. So she was saddled with taking care of the poor masses in quotes. And then this whole disbursement stuff occurred under her watch. And it's very interesting that I am yet to hear of any household that received that fund. I don't know if you've heard. But then, of course, we saw the humongous amount that was disbursed, when she was in charge, about
729 billion.
29 billion. And we are not talking about million here. That's billion.
According to the justice in charge of that case at that time, that was 5% of
5% of the annual budget then as at that time. And so it was quite instructive that despite such disbursements, nobody knew what happened, where the money went to. So when Serap took that step and acquired or procured that judgment, it was a nice step. It was a great step in the right direction, because the whole essence is, this is to serve as some sort of a stopgap. It's supposed to be some sort of a measure for accountability. You can't just collect that type of money and it will disappear, for Christ's sake. That money is enough to fund some countries in Africa.
Absolutely.
And so it is a problem if that type of money can disappear and nobody's talking. So when that judgment was obtained, it was a great one for Serap, because, of course, I'm a lawyer, so we know what's going on. Serap rarely gets judgments. Sorry to say this. But when this one was pursued to the end, we are very happy. So now it comes back to what you said. What is the implementation plan? How is it implemented? And to quickly address this issue as to why it looks like judgments are not often enforced against high-placed individuals, I think is a fault with the Nigerian system. Because in Nigeria, there's just no two about it. The moment you are there, like you're the high class, you tend to have this type of protection around you, which is not found in the Constitution or any sort of law, except, of course, those who have immunity. And those who even have immunity, they don't even have matters against them until after they've left the office that gave them that immunity gap. But now these other people that, okay, fine, this has happened, like Umar Farouk's case, nothing seems to happen. It is a Nigerian issue. I can tell you that it doesn't happen, well, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't happen in most civilized countries. No matter who you are, the law must come for you. Otherwise, there's no, the deterrence it seeks to serve will really not be there. Because the moment you are high up there and you know that you can do this and go away, then what's the point? So it comes down to corruption. It comes down to a faulty system, a system where you're my brother and you're the governor. I can do anything I want. So that is the challenge. We need to go back to the foundational level and see how we can rejig the system. And it is actually broad, very broad, because too much power is vested in certain offices, which shouldn't be. And well, I'm just trying to bring in, because if we want to expand this conversation, it is going to be very broad.
Yeah, I would really like us to expand it, because that's where my interest lies.
Yes.
But before we, maybe when I ask the next question, we can begin to broaden it further. Yes, and not obeying court order is a hallmark of a successive administration in Nigeria. We are all aware of that. Yeah, but the question is, what is your assessment of this particular administration with respect to the principles of separation of power and rule of law?
All right. Thank you very much. You see, these are very tough but honest conversations that we must have here. The truth is, after President Yaradua, it's as if things went down a slippery slope. We just kept on having it from bad to worse to whatever it is now. It was a bit diplomatic during the Jonathan time. We saw some sort of relationship between the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. Everything kind of went according to, went by the book. But after President Buhari, things kind of became a bit hazy. So much so that in the present dispensation, we see the Senate president more or less going in a representative capacity on behalf of the president. I mean, this shouldn't be. The Senate president is supposed to be someone that the executive, I won't say cato, but there should be that sort of, I am approaching the legislative chambers. Okay, last week we saw the new loan request. I was shocked when I was reading my paper the next day and I saw that it had already been approved. I'm like, when did they go through the scrutiny of looking into each head of this conversation? It wasn't there. You look at what happens overseas. The Clintons were recently summoned to the Congress. Why? Because their name featured in the Epstein file. Do you think that can happen in Nigeria? Well, let's leave that for posterity. But in terms of the line, the fine line between the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, I think something is wrong in Nigeria. And it weakens the whole essence of democracy if the executive can't be checked as it should be. Because the average Nigerian has a representative in the legislature. Even though, of course, the president represents all of us, but you can tie your representation to a particular representative, either in the Senate or in the House of Reps. Unfortunately, it's as if the present legislature has become an extension of the executive arm, and that is actually a challenge, because those who drafted our constitution, of course, we borrowed the American constitution, but what was the whole essence? The whole essence was so that the executive will not become so powerful as to be overriding. foundational, if we go back to the constitution which we borrowed, the Americans just came out of a colonial system where the British government was, the head was a king who did as he wished. So in trying to establish their own government, they thought, come on, what can we do so that we don't have one man waking up tomorrow to say, I don't like this person, let this happen. They had that structure in place. Unfortunately, although fortunately when we copied it, it was a nice idea that we copied, but implementing it, it looks as if everything is now what's the president test, or what does he feel about the definition of democracy? If democracy is about everybody being in my pocket, that is it. But is that what the constitution says? No. So I think in Nigeria, there's a big problem as to the separation of powers. It doesn't work. It's not working as it should be. And I think it's something that we should look more into, because until our government works as it should, then we can't have much progress as it should be. We can't.
Yes, and I agree with you. And that's just on one hand. Then the other leg of the question, which is the not obeying court order becoming the hallmark of, every administration, like you rightly mentioned, it slided from Yaradua to Jonathan to Buhari to even this judgment that we are talking about today was granted, I think
2024.
Yes,
Mr. President.
The current administration was written to write the history by putting their names in gold by implementing this judgment.
Yes, sir.
Even if it
correct.
was from the previous administration, and government is supposed to be continuous.
Yes.
So I don't know. This has now become like a norm that once it has to do with the state versus an individual versus an organization, the judgment may just come and it might not just be obeyed. Is the court helpless when it comes to obeying court judgment? And even when it eventually appealed, because during our investigation, when SERAP was contacted, we found out that the legal counsel to the former minister appealed that
judgment.
Yes,
the Court of Appeal.
Yes, but a lawyer spoke to me on this program and said something about if you take a case to Court of Appeal, let's say this April, you won't be getting dates until like 2029, 2030. Is
That's
that
correct.
supposed to be like that?
It's not supposed to be like that.
So
but
what do you think is the problem?
it still goes back to the foundational problem I talked about, the Constitution. So the Constitution created, of course, these categories. Of course, you have your, the magistrates, the lower courts, the high courts. That's the states and the federal, and then of course you come to the Court of Appeal, and then they come to the Supreme Court. But these courts, basically, the appellate courts now, if you look at the area of coverage, they are regional, and you know how many states we have in the country and how many states are in the region. I can imagine how many cases come up on daily basis from these high courts. So we are looking at cases coming up, and so there's a serious backlog. Although recently there's something that the president of the Court of Appeal did. She went around the regions trying to expedite cases.
Yeah, I think during the anniversary, they said they were compiling about over 300 or something cases.
Yes, that's correct.
Must be,
dispensed with.
Speedy dispensation.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think we'll come to that when I start talking about the other arm of government, because I wanted to start it from the broad perspective. Then I'll narrow it down to the sector you belong to, which is the justice sector. But before we go there, let me just take this one more question. What is your take in the fight against corruption by this Tinubu-led administration? This is talking about your opinion as a Nigerian now.
Wow. It's a very technical question. In fact, it's almost as if you're walking into a landmine anytime you're trying to answer such question. Because the question becomes, what is corruption? Corruption in Nigeria has taken diverse forms, some manufactured, in quotes, and some not seen. and some becomes kind of washed under, some sort of washing ceremony, so that corruption no longer becomes corruption. Well, to some extent, the President Tinubu's government has tried in their fight against corruption. They have bolstered the institutions, the EFCC have been doing their job, the ICPC and all of that. But in recent times, because we are speaking the truth here, it looks as if corruption, the fight against corruption has taken a funny turn. I mean, look at people like Malami. I'm not his lawyer, I'm not CC'd of those pertinent details of his case, but why now? Look at the former governor of Kaduna, El-Rufai. Why now? So when El-Rufai was campaigning for this administration, I mean, was he not? If he's corrupt now, I mean, I'm not saying he's corrupt, but if he was corrupt, then why didn't they go after him then? So why now that we are at the verge of the next electoral season? These are the issues that I try to. So the President Tinubu's administration has actually tried in his fight against corruption, but it is beginning to look like corruption is multifaceted, because we know some persons in government, some former governors who decamped and suddenly their sins, have been put by the way. So I think there has to be this formal approach to fighting corruption, because until there is this formal approach, corruption will continue to thrive, and it will become a case of, am I in the ruling party? And we see so much the campings these days. In as much as some of them are for interest, I feel some of them actually are to shield some things that they don't want people to look underneath. But, well, time will tell in all of this.
Yes, let me just put you on the spot. Do you think the Tinubu-led administration is selective when it comes to, or do you think it's vindictive when it comes to about personal vendetta when it comes to, going after alleged corrupt persons?
It's a hard question because so the facts are there. Like the Malamit case that I just talked about, the facts are there. We've seen the houses, the properties, and all of those. He may come out to say he got them through genuine means. Of course, the case is still ongoing. But, I mean, it's really hard to tell. So, my only challenge is the timing. If all of this had happened before the verge of an electoral season, where these guys are key actors in the political space, people like El-Rufai, you can't talk about northern leaders, and you won't mention people like El-Rufai. You saw what happened at the airport.
Okay, so are you saying there's the right time or wrong time when it comes to the fight against corruption?
I'm just saying the fight against corruption has to be prompt, immediate. If you have this knowledge that this person is corrupt, why wait until a convenient time? That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so the timing is what you are raising dust about now.
Yes.
That it might be an attempt to
to stifle,
the dissenting opinions, people
Exactly.
that are not on the same page with you.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you mentioned something which I'm also aware of, that a certain former governor, who is also a certain former
governors, there are many.
APC chairman, once said on camera that once you are in the ruling party,
your sins are forgiven.
Yes, and I know you are aware of that.
Yes.
So I think one can really, do permutations when it comes to the body language of the fight against corruption and the people being, arrested and detained over corruption allegations. I think at this point we'll just, take a break.
Okay.
Let's pause it here.
Okay.
We'll match a break.
Okay.
In the last, 15-20 minutes, being in the studio with a very interesting guest of mine here, Emmanuel Jonathan, who is a legal practitioner, who has joined me to do an overview of one of the many unresolved cases we have in our courts today. Talking about the case involving the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, Sadiya Umar Farouk, I beg your pardon, and who a judgment was, delivered to explain how 729 billion was disbursed to 24.3 million households in Nigeria. In terms of the numbers of states, the the criteria for selection, and not refusal to disclose this the said register when it was requested by Sarah. That judgment was delivered, and of course, and it was a landmark judgment, and people like Femi Falana and senior lawyers applauded that judgment and praised it as a victory for democracy. But sadly, that judgment, according to Serap, was appealed before the president could enforce the judgment. And as we speak, there is no date for hearing from the appeal court. And this is one of the many challenges when it comes to justice delivery and the speedy dispensation of justice that necessitated this program, Cold Files. When cases become a cold case file in court, sometimes it's swept under the carpet, sometimes justice delay. They said it's not justice denied, but in this part of the world, it could be justice denied. But we'll come back and switch to the justice sector properly, and also do some critical analysis of what the challenges might be when it comes to justice dispensation in the country. Don't go away. If you have joined me from the first half of the program, you must agree with me that my guests have been very interesting, and his points have also been well noted as key points that we need to know about the challenges we have when it comes to governance in our country. But if you have just joined me, you have not missed much. Stay tuned, because this second half is even going to be more interesting.
I report. Have you ever witnessed a crime or suspicious activity around you? Don't stay silent. Take action. You can now report crimes easily by sending videos to us on I Report. Record a video and a brief narration of the incident with the location and send to 0701 372 8007 on WhatsApp only. Your action could help save a life or stop a crime in progress. Stay alert, stay safe, be the voice, take a stand. I Report, only on Third Eye Africa.
Welcome back from that quick break. It's still Cold Files on Third Eye Africa TV, your number one channel when it comes to crime watch in Africa. We are here for investigative reporting, of course, community safety. And this is your program at this point in time. And we've been in the studio with a guest of mine who has been having a very exciting moment with me when it comes to bringing the issues to the front burner, issues regarding delayed justice, prolonged trial, and even, if you like, cases that have been swept under the carpet in the courts today. And my guest is still here with me. He's no other person but Emmanuel Jonathan, a legal practitioner who has joined me to take a look, an overview of the case in question today, the case involving the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, talking about Sadiya Umar Farouk, who claimed to have disbursed 729 billion to over 24 million poor Nigerians. And Serap has been on her to come out with details of how these monies were disbursed and the criteria in the selection of the persons, the beneficiaries of these funds that were disbursed.
Yes.
Thank you again,
Thank you.
Emmanuel Jonathan, for finding time with me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right, this is the second half of the program.
Okay.
I want us to first of all take a look at public perception about the judiciary. Okay. I'll first of all ask you his very first question in this second half, which has to do with what your opinion is, or the major challenge, faced
the justice faced with the justice delivery in Nigeria today? What are those key challenges that you think justice delivery is facing?
Okay, thank you. I will, first of all, I will say that there is one major challenge. And what is that? Time. Most times you see cases spending 5 years at just the trial court. And you start wondering, 5 years, this is 5 years we are talking about. So let's say you're going to a transaction worth 10 million naira in 2020. In 2025, when that case is most likely decided, what is the value of 10 million naira as of then? Time. And most times you look at it, you wonder the challenge, is it that we don't have enough judges? Or what is the issue here? Well, I know that the judges do make returns. I'm not sure again as to the period, whether it's a half yearly or so. Some judges just sleep on their cases. That is a challenge. And, if you are already in a court and your matter is already ongoing and is dragging on forever, and you want to start talking about the judge recusing himself, you become an enemy. You can't talk about the moment your file is reassigned. It's as if, though, this lawyer, this guy. So the problem is time. Though, to the credit of many judges, they do things very fast. I mean, I've had judgment in 1 year. This FCT in a high court, very brilliant judge. So most times it has to do with the speed at delivering justice. And of course, you know what they say about justice delayed, So that's the number one challenge. Well, is there another challenge? The major one I'll say is corruption. Though this is not really so glaring, except for those prominent and political cases. So you are going to court on your opponent, he's already telling you he knows the judge. So it's a challenge, and truly most of them do know the judges, because these are men who have flesh and blood. I don't want to go much into that because, of course, I want to protect my, my institution and all of that. But these are the issues. So if you don't have the money to sort out the judge, even if you go out there and you're pleading your case until you turn blue in the face, the matter is already decided. So basically, these two are the key issues: the delay in justice delivery and the issue of corruption. It's terrible.
Okay, now let's look at it one after the other. The issue of corruption, we have already agreed to that, because when you have a minister of an administration giving out gifts of luxury houses to judicial officers,
and cars.
senior and cars, of course, what kind of influence that can have on court decision, especially when the judge has to preside over a case that individual has an interest in.
Yes.
Now let's look at the other leg of it, which has to do with speedy dispensation of justice. Do you think there should be like what we have done with the electoral tribunals? We have a timeline where cases should be decided.
Yes.
We don't seem to have that when it comes to corruption and other criminal matters. And secondly, when we talk about selectiveness,
yes,
I'll give an example with the trial of the former IPOB agitator, Nnamdi Kanu. When the former judge recused,
yes, Justice Binta,
recused herself from that trial,
yes,
and Justice Omotosho stepped in.
Yes,
we saw the Federal High Court is just behind us here.
Yes, yes.
We saw the weekly trial arraignment of this suspect until judgment was pronounced.
Yes.
Why, if we can do that to a certain person, why is that principle not applicable to other some other individuals, particularly those that are facing corruption trials?
Okay, so the case of Nnamdi Kanu was, of course, it's just like any day. What's his name? Abakari comes to court,
Mm-hmm.
or Malami, there's always so much traffic. So it's a case that it just couldn't have gone on forever because it would disrupt so many things around the city area. Now, the question, was that case really fast? Well, if you look at what the new ACJA has done, it has tried to instill some provisions that will make sure that cases now go very fast. Many states have domesticated this law, though some, not all states, but it has prevented the issue of adjournments. So if you are coming to court for trial, you must come prepared as prosecution. If after 3 adjournments, you are coming and there's no story, you are telling the court story, you want adjournment, that matter will be struck out. So I think there has been considerable improvement in our criminal justice dispensation, especially as it pertains to the judicial system, because trials now happen a bit faster than before. Though you are still correct in the sense that it still takes relatively long time to come to decision. But this still goes back to what I said before, that the judges are overwhelmed.
Okay.
Severally, we've been in court where we say, my lord, please, can we take this date? And the judge will say, do you want me to die? Or like, am I not a human? I need to rest. These people are choked. They are choked. And if you look at, and I pity the federal high court judges because they are not much like the state judges that have several divisions. So cases, like the one particular judge I know that is handling so many high profile cases, the man is, you look at him most times, because I appear in his court often, and he's doing a lot. So they need to, I think we need to amend the constitution again in that regard, so that some of these cases can be handled at the state high court level and not necessarily the federal high court. And then the issue of time. So as to whether there's a time frame for hearing of criminal cases, while it is not fixed that cases must be concluded in 90 days, but if the prosecution is serious, if the judge is serious, if the defense counsel is serious, things can happen very fast. Sometimes it will shock you to anyway, I know you will be aware because, considering your area of interest, sometimes you see accused persons in court. Where's your lawyer? My lawyer, he said he's coming. And the case, from morning till when you leave court, the lawyer has not come. So these are the issues. So in that case, the judge he will not be happy to proceed without the presence of the lawyer. So that tomorrow it will not be an issue of bias. And some cases, definitely there has to be a lawyer in such case. So if all parties are serious, coupled with what the ACJA have put in place, I think we can have speedy trials for the criminal cases. But for the civil cases, well, that one is a long story. It's a long story.
I was going to come to that because even in some cases, we have also had cases where the judges are not in court, not just the lawyers. Yes, because I also go to court to monitor some of these cases. We've had cases where the defense lawyer will be there, the prosecution will be there, but the judge will be absent, with no excuse.
No reason.
So I think it is from both ways. And if you check, just oppose that with the press statement that was released at the beginning of this year by the NBA, they expressed worried about, lawyers' involvement, in corruption and, and all of that. And that was even, they made reference to the case that was involving Ozekome that I just talked about in my intro and all of that. And, pointed that these issues are, eroding public, trust in the judiciary. So now my question now, I want to ask, do you still think Nigerians still believe in the judiciary to be the hope of the common man? Because that is the saying, that the hope of the common man is the court. But what happens to the politicians these days when they tell you go to court? It's just like trying to mock you.
They're trying to mock you.
When somebody tells you go to court, it means what can you do? So I want to ask, do you still think, what can we begin to do to regain public trust? Do you still think Nigerians still believe the judiciary to be the hope of the common man?
Okay, yes. So you've asked 3 questions in that summarized form, which I want to address one by one. On the first question of lawyers' involvement in these corrupt issues, because the clients, well, some clients know the judges, they approach them directly, but most times it's through the conduit of the lawyers. There are 2 issues here. The first is that I think the legal disciplinary committee has kind of lost focus on what they should be doing as a monitoring group. So lawyers, that time we had the outburst in court where a judge said lawyers should stop approaching her in chamber, and NBA didn't take that up. Nobody approached the judge, or if they did, well, it wasn't published. Get us the name of these people. Let's state an example. So lawyers will continue to be corrupt when there is that shield, in quotes, shield, where there are no disciplinary actions. Then 2, it becomes a moral issue. Lawyer, of course, the legal profession is a business. The same way auto dealers sell their stuff, the same way bankers market their law firms also are out to make business and profit. Most times they have people on the payroll. So you have a client that is coming with a serious bag or a big bag of Ghana must go filled with dollars, and he's telling you, if you don't do this, well, I know who can. You see, that is where the moral fiber of the lawyer comes to fall. Will he say, no, take your money somewhere else? Or will he look at what he can achieve by that? The case you talked about involving the London property, even though that was such a long time ago, but these are some of the conversations we're trying to have, the moral stance of the lawyer to say no. And so that happens. So it becomes a moral issue. Then the institutions, they are not doing what they ought to do. Then on the other aspect of whether the society still feels that the court is the last hope of the common man, I would say yes. And why do I say so? The courts do, when they want to do good business, when the court want to be serious, the courts are very dispassionate. Where there is no interest, these judges do wonderful stuff. I mean, you read some judgments, you attend some proceedings, and at the end of the day, you just come away and like, this was justice. There is no way that it could have gone the other way. And you see the appellate courts, when they try these judgments upstairs, you see the appellate court slamming the appellant cost because it was clear. So, yes, when the court want to do good business, when there's no interest, they do good stuff and parties go home happy. Even those are lost, of course, when justice was done and they see it, maybe they just want to flex their ego. Otherwise, I would say yes, the judiciary, the courts still remain the last hope of the common man, because that is the place where you can just walk in, file your case, and you're ahead. And interestingly, the Nigerian legal system is such that you can represent yourself. If you don't have the money to get the service of a lawyer, of course, though we always recommend as much as you can because of the dynamic intricacies in all of that. But if you want to be heard, the doors are open. You walk in, you'll be heard. And then this issue of go to court, it still goes back to what I said at the beginning, that since the time of President Yaradua, things really took a kind of slippery fall. This issue is just started after 2023. Go to court. Go to court. And our institutions are suffering because, like you said, so if a minister does not decide to give judges homes, judges are now will be suffering accommodation issues. If a minister does not give them car, or most times you see governors They'll line up these cars and they are like donating cars to judges. And it was the essence of us having the distinct arms. You can as well swallow up the judiciary, let it become another arm of the executive. Let's know that maybe we'll form a new arm of government. We'll call it ESCO Judo, whatever.
Yes, because that's going to take me to the next question, which is the judiciary truly independent?
In Nigeria, no. No. In Nigeria, it is not. In Nigeria, it's clear. You just said it. If an executive arm member is donating cars, houses, so what's the independence there? What? There's no independence, and it's not supposed to be like that, because excuse me. So the issue here, like I said, the problem is we copy the constitution that we are not ready to be careful to study. Abroad, judges, certain category of judges are elected, not even appointed, and even those ones that are appointed, they have to undergo serious scrutiny. Here in Nigeria, if your father is lucky to be up there and you're a lawyer, you can be sure that if you want this, you can get it. It is a fact. Many times we hear name of judges and we are like, oh, okay, either you're a relation or you're a relation by marriage or by bloodline or birth. So the judiciary in Nigeria is not independent. I'll tell you that for free. That's why they'll still keep on having strikes. Why do they have strikes? Payment. So if the executive doesn't like this, a group of those in charge, they'll withhold funds and all of that. So there's really no true independence. No, I will not say there is.
All right, we begin to coast home now. Okay. I'll just ask you what your recommendations are when it comes to justice dispensation in Nigeria and your final take.
Oh, thank you very much. By the way, it's been a nice time being here with you. Really, it's been a nice time. So what we should do to make the justice system be more workable and more fair. First of all, I would say that there should be this clarity on cases. There should be this clarity. The system should be what it is. The symbol of justice is Lady Justicia. Her eyes are blinded. She doesn't know who you are. So even if you are her son, she doesn't care because she can't even see you. Her arms are there with the sword to come down, the scale of justice, depending on who and what your case looks like. But in Nigeria, justice has taken away the blindfold. So if you look like somebody I like, or maybe I've been whispered to, I will give you justice, whether or not you deserve it. No. So the common man will have to be taken back to those early days where justice was what it was, where justice could even fight against the sitting government. Look at what is happening with this whole issue of ADC and the INEC, I mean, it's just clear that some people are just trying to be funny. So this matter was at the Court of Appeal, right? It emanated from a court, the Federal High Court, and there was no application seeking leave. Because this type of matter, you must definitely go back to the High Court and say, please, I'm going upstairs, give me leave. And if the court grants it, good and fine. If the court says no, you now go upstairs. But you went straight up to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal felt that he had a good appeal to even sit and listen and decide and spend 6 good months. And somewhere just before the election cycle, the primaries and all of that, they are coming up with this whole ruling. And then you wonder, why would the common man now feel that the judiciary in that situation is fair? So these are the problems we are talking about. So that the system has to be clear. It has to be fair for people to have that confidence. Will it happen in our time? I don't know. We pray. But unless there is a major radical shift, I mean, things will really not have be different from what we are currently experiencing. Okay? So, but we have hope. We have hope.
We have hope is a good place to anchor it there. We have hope. Let's keep hope alive. And that is the final take from my guest today on the program, Code Files. And with me, over the last 55 minutes or thereabout, is Jonathan, Emmanuel Jonathan, who is a legal practitioner. If you had followed me from the beginning or even from the second half of this interview, you agree with me that we have had a very interesting moment with our guest today, who has found time out of his busy schedule to join me on Code Files today. And I want to thank you sincerely,
thank you very much.
Emmanuel Jonathan, for finding time to participate on the program today. I hope to bring you back again, but certainly not on this same topic,
Sure.
because there are numerous and endless list of cases that we need to review on this program. I would like to have you again on the program.
I'll be happy to be here
within a short time.
I'll be happy
All right.
to be
So,
here.
and that
Thank
is
you.
where we'll be drawing the curtain on the program today. Code Files will come your way again on this same station and same time. Remember, security is everybody's business. If you see something, please say something. Take advantage of our iReport platform. And if you are in a safe place to take a video or a photo, please send it to us on that platform. And be rest assured, we'll contact you and follow up with that report. And that is where I'll be wrapping it on the show today. Please remember to keep a date with us, same time and same station. My name remains Charles Agedu. I'll see you again. Keep watching Toda Africa TV.